The restaurant buzzed with the clink of glasses and forced laughter, but the air turned heavy when my son, Trevor, raised his glass to toast my 62nd birthday. Smirking, he called my life useless. The guests fell silent, their eyes darting to their plates. Humiliation burned in my chest, but I gripped my wine glass, its stem cool against my palm, and forced a smile that felt like a crack in my face. Trevor leaned back, his tie loosened, while his wife, Lindsay, sipped her wine, her diamond earrings glinting under the chandelier. Her lips curled just enough to show she relished the moment. "You done?" I asked, my voice low, almost a growl. Trevor laughed, sharp and mean. "Done, Dad. I'm just getting started. You sit there acting like a saint, but what do you got?" He waved at the half-eaten cake with "Happy 62nd" scrawled in icing. "You're a nobody. Always were." The words stung like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I thought of the deed in my pocket, a $2 million house, my life savings, meant for Trevor and Lindsay. It was to be my gift, a way to give them the life I never had. Now, it felt like a stone, heavy and useless. Lindsay leaned forward, her voice smooth as silk. "Frank, we don't need your approval. We've earned our place. She paused, her eyes flicking over me like I was a stain on her dress, "you're just, here." I set my glass down, the clink echoing. "I was going to give you something tonight," I said, my voice calm despite my hammering pulse. "A house, paid in full. But after this?" I looked at Trevor, then Lindsay. "Forget it." The room froze. A woman at the next table gasped. Trevor's face twisted, his cheeks flushing red. "You're lying," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. Wine sloshed, staining the tablecloth like blood. "You? A house? You're too cheap to buy a new car." I didn't answer. The truth was in my eyes, and he saw it. His rage boiled over, and he stood, knocking his chair back. "You're pathetic, Dad. Always playing the victim. I'm done with you." Lindsay grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "Let's go, Trev. He's not worth it." Her cold, dismissive look branded me as garbage. They stormed out, Trevor's shoes squeaking on the polished floor, the door slamming like a gunshot. The guests muttered, avoiding my gaze. The waiter hovered, then cleared plates. The table was a mess, crumpled napkins, half-eaten food, that untouched cake. I sat alone, the restaurant's clock drilling into my skull. 62 years, and this was my reward, a son who spat in my face, a daughter-in-law who saw me as a relic. I paid the bill, my hand steady despite the storm inside. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp. I didn't go home. I walked, city lights blurring as my mind churned. Trevor's words replayed, each a deeper cut. But something stirred, a memory of a promise I'd made to myself long ago, and to Emily, my late wife. Revenge wouldn't be hasty, it would be just. And I knew where to start. The house was too quiet, the silence pressing on my chest. I sat in the living room, a flickering lamp casting shadows. In my lap was our family album, its leather cover worn. I opened it to a photo of me, Emily, and Trevor at a picnic. His tiny hand clutched a balloon, his grin wide enough to break your heart. I traced the photo, smudging the edge. Where had that boy gone? A memory surfaced, Emily, years ago, helping a neighbor with groceries, her smile warm as she said, "Small acts build big things, Frank." That was her way, giving without expecting. I tried to live like that for Trevor. I flipped a page. Trevor at graduation, cap tilted, smile cocky. I'd worked double shifts at the firm, crunching numbers until my eyes burned, to cover his tuition. When his first startup flopped, I bailed him out, $50,000, no questions asked. He'd called me his hero, promised he'd never forget. Another page, Emily's funeral. Trevor stood apart, checking his phone while I shook hands with mourners. Got a meeting, Dad, he mumbled, leaving me in that empty church. I hadn't cried then. I didn't know how. The album felt heavier now. I closed it, my fingers lingering. All those years, I'd told myself it was worth it, every late night, every missed vacation, every dream shelved for him. And what did I get? A son who called me a failure in front of strangers. I crossed to my desk, the floor cold under my socks. My laptop's blue light cut through the dim room. I typed Trevor's name into the search bar. Articles appeared, tying him to shaky business deals. One headline stood out, local entrepreneur faces scrutiny over unpaid debts. I leaned closer, a grim smile forming. His fintech startup was bleeding money, investors pulling out. I'd warned him it sounded shaky, but he'd laughed, called me out of touch. Now, here was proof he'd overplayed his hand. I dialed Jack, an old friend from my financial consultant days. He answered, voice gravelly but warm. Frank, it's late. You okay? I need a favor, I said, tone even. Trevor's business. Details. Off the record. Jack chuckled. Your kid's been playing with fire, hasn't he? I've heard whispers. Give me a day. He's not my kid anymore, I said, sharper than intended. Jack promised to call and hung up. I pulled a notepad from the drawer, its paper crisp. I wrote, Trevor, debts, bad deals. Then, Lindsay, image, social media. Her curated Instagram life was a lie, one crack, and she'd crumble. The pen scratched as I jotted ideas, quiet moves, nothing flashy. This was about justice, showing them I wasn't the nobody they thought. The library's reading room smelled of old paper and dust. I sat at a corner table, financial journals stacked around me. My laptop hummed, open to a database of business filings. Trevor's name glared from the screen, tied to a sinking company. I noted, over-leveraged, investors fleeing. My pen scratched, its grip worn smooth. Decades of spotting cracks in deals others missed came alive again. Trevor's business was a house of cards, big promises, no substance. An article in a trade journal detailed a shady loan he'd taken to prop up his startup. Predatory terms, the kind that bury you. I smiled thinly. He'd bragged about that deal last spring, dismissing my questions about cash flow. I should have pushed harder. Instead, I'd paid for his wine. Never again. I called Jack. He answered, voice low. Frank, you're obsessive, he half joked. What now? Tell me about Trevor's loan. The offshore one. Jack sighed. It's a mess. High interest, sketchy firm. He's missed payments. There's talk of an ethics probe, fudged numbers. He paused. You sure about this road? I'm sure, I said, tone flat. Jack promised more details and hung up. I crossed to the copier, feeding it the article. The machine whirred, spitting out pages like ammunition. Back at my table, I sifted through Lindsay's world. Her Instagram was a shrine to perfection, designer bags, curated brunches. But comments hinted at trouble, brands dropping her, whispers of fake followers. One scandal, and her empire would crack. I stepped outside, the wind rattling the library's glass doors, my folder of documents under my arm. At a cafe down the street, in a dim corner booth, I crafted an anonymous email to Hargrove, one of Trevor's investors, known for cutting losses fast. Subject, concerns about your investment. I attached the loan agreement and article. No signature, just facts. My finger hovered over send. I thought of Trevor's smirk, his words, your life's a waste. I clicked. The email vanished, a silent arrow aimed at his heart. My phone buzzed, Trevor's name flashed. I let it ring twice, then answered, voice calm. What? You bastard, he hissed, slurring with rage. You sent that email, didn't you? Hargrove pulled out. My deal's tanking. Sounds like your mess caught up, I said, measured. Don't play dumb, he shouted. I heard a crash, glass, maybe a bottle. You're trying to ruin me. You're doing that yourself, I said, and hung up. Hargrove's assistant replied, Mr. Hargrove is reviewing the materials and has paused commitments. Perfect. A new ally emerged at the community center where I volunteered. Clara, a sharp-eyed retiree who'd overheard Trevor's toast, approached me days later. Frank, I saw what your son did. It wasn't right. Her voice was firm, her gray hair pulled back tightly. She'd worked in PR, knew how to spin a story. If you need help setting things straight, I'm in. Her offer was a spark, a way to amplify my moves without exposing myself. I shared my plan's outline with Clara, keeping details vague. She nodded, her eyes glinting. Lindsay's type thrives on image. I know people who can whisper in the right ears. Her connections would prove useful later. At home, I sat at my desk, a small recorder in my pocket. A knock came, sharp as a hammer. I pressed record and opened the door. Trevor and Lindsay stood there, Trevor's face red and twisted, Lindsay's eyes cold as frost. Her perfume, sharp and floral, hit like an insult. You've gone too far, Trevor spat, pushing past me, his shoes scuffing the hardwood. Lindsay followed, her heels clicking, purse clutched like a shield. Sit, I said, gesturing to the couch. They didn't. Trevor paced, fists clenched, while Lindsay stood rigid, lips thin. You tanked my deal, Trevor said, voice low. Hargrove's gone, the bank's calling. You owe me, Dad. Fix this. I crossed my arms. You called me nothing. Now you want my help. Lindsay stepped forward, voice smooth. Frank, let's be reasonable. We're family. You don't want to hurt Trevor's future, do you? Her smile was fake, her eyes calculating. Family doesn't humiliate each other, I said, my tone ice. Trevor slammed the wall. Enough games. Give me the money, or I'll make sure everyone knows what a selfish old man you are. The recorder hummed silently. You're not getting a dime, I said. Lindsay's mask slipped. You're pathetic, Frank. Hoarding money while we struggle. You're no father. Trevor glared. This isn't over. I'll bury you. They stormed out, the door slamming. I played the recording back. Their voices, Trevor's threats, Lindsay's venom, were clear. Gold. With Clara's help, I'd send it to a rival influencer, someone hungry to expose Lindsay's facade. In a cramped lawyer's office, I slid a USB drive to Richard, my old friend and legal counsel. He played the recording, his frown deepening. This is dynamite, Frank, he said. But dangerous. You sure? I'm not playing, I said, voice steady. They crossed a line. He nodded. No fingerprints. Anonymous leaks, third parties. What's the endgame? I didn't answer fully. My plan was a mosaic, the recording to ruin Lindsay, pressure on Trevor's creditors to tighten the noose. I'd untangled financial knots for decades, now I'd unravel my son's life. Richard drafted letters to Trevor's creditors, untraceable, nudging them to act on public records of missed payments. Clara connected me with Kay, a rival influencer with a grudge against Lindsay. I sent Kay the recording anonymously. Days later, the newspaper headline screamed, Local entrepreneur faces financial ruin. Trevor's photo, grainy, showed him dodging cameras. I sipped coffee, satisfaction settling in my chest. The clock ticked, each sound a nail in his coffin. I'd mailed the creditor letters, and they'd moved fast, freezing his accounts. Jack called. It's a bloodbath, Frank. Trevor's office is a ghost town. He's fighting with Lindsay, she's screaming about her brand. Let him beg, I said, and hung up. Lindsay's Instagram unraveled. Kay posted the recording, Lindsay's voice, clear, he's useless, pathetic. Brands dropped her within hours, her profile bleeding sponsors. Her latest post, a shaky video, pleaded, this is a misunderstanding. The comments tore her apart. Clara called, her voice smug. Kay's post hit 1 million views. Lindsay's finished. Good, I said. Keep your ear to the ground. The sun blazed over the Emily Greenwood Foundation's opening at the community center. Balloons dotted the lawn, banners fluttering. I stood at a podium, the microphone cool in my hand, a bronze plaque gleaming behind me. The clock tower ticked faintly, time moving forward. This foundation, I said, voice steady, is for families who need a hand up, for kids who deserve a chance. It's Emily's dream, and today, it's real. Applause erupted. A young mother thanked me, her son clutching a scholarship letter. Clara stood nearby, her nod subtle but proud. The foundation was funded by my savings, millions built through quiet discipline. It was Emily's legacy, not just mine. Paul, an organizer, whispered, heard your son skip town. That's his story, I said, neutral. Trevor and Lindsay were shadows now, their lives a cautionary tale. At the memorial garden, I sat by Emily's stone marker, Trevor's letter in my hand. His words, excuses, pleased to meet, meant nothing. I struck a match, the letter curling into ash. The fire felt cleansing, shedding a weight I'd carried too long. Emily, I whispered, touching the stone, I did it. I'm free. I'd booked a ticket to Rome, Emily's dream of cobblestone streets and warm cafes now mine to chase. The sun dipped, painting the sky gold. I drove into the dusk, the road ahead wide open, each tick of my watch a step toward something new. The plane's hum was a steady pulse, lulling Frank into a half-sleep as Rome's skyline grew closer. He clutched a worn postcard in his jacket pocket, Emily's handwriting scrawled on the back, someday, we'll sip espresso in Trastevere. The postcard was creased, its edges soft from years of handling, but it felt alive now, a promise he was finally keeping. At 62, Frank was no longer the man who'd let life slip through his fingers for others. The weight of Trevor's betrayal, Lindsay's venom, had burned away, leaving something harder, sharper, a man who'd reclaimed his own story. Rome was warm, the air thick with the scent of stone and espresso. Frank wandered the cobbled streets, his suitcase rattling behind him. At a small cafe, he sat under a striped awning, the Colosseum a distant shadow. His phone buzzed, a text from Clara. Trevor's selling the house. Lindsay left him. You okay? Frank typed back, never better. He set the phone face down, the espresso's bitter warmth grounding him. Trevor and Lindsay were ghosts now, their lives unraveling as his began anew. A woman at the next table, silver hair catching the sun, smiled as she sketched the piazza. American? She asked, her accent soft, maybe French. Frank nodded. First time here. Never too late to start, she said, her eyes kind but sharp, like she saw the weight he'd carried. They talked, about art, loss, second chances. Her name was Elise, a painter who'd left a corporate life to chase beauty. Frank found himself laughing, the sound foreign but free. Days turned to weeks. Frank rented a small apartment overlooking the Tiber, its walls cracked but warm. He volunteered at a local community center, teaching financial literacy to immigrants, his old skills finding new purpose. Elise joined him sometimes, her sketches decorating the center's walls. The work felt like Emily's foundation, small acts building big things. One evening, a letter arrived, forwarded from the States. Trevor's handwriting, shaky. Frank opened it, the words spilling out, regret, apologies, a plea for forgiveness. I was wrong, Dad. I'm trying to fix things. Frank read it twice, then set it aside. The anger was gone, replaced by indifference. Trevor would have to walk his own path now. Frank stepped onto his balcony, the city's lights flickering below. He thought of Emily, her voice a whisper in the breeze. "We made it," he said, raising a glass of wine to the stars. The ticking of his watch blended with the city's hum, each second a step into a life he'd earned. The Roman sun dipped low, painting the Tiber's ripples gold. Frank leaned on his apartment's balcony railing, a glass of Montepulciano in hand, its deep red catching the light. 6 months in Rome had carved new lines in his face, not from exhaustion, but from laughter, late-night talks with Elise, and the quiet pride of his work at the community center. The Emily Greenwood Foundation thrived back home, its scholarships lifting families he'd never meet. For the first time, Frank felt like he was living for himself, not just for Emily's memory or Trevor's demands. His phone buzzed, an email from Clara, Foundation's making waves. Local paper wants an interview. Also, Trevor's been asking about you. Says he's changed. Thoughts? Frank's jaw tightened. Trevor's letter, still unanswered, sat in a drawer with old receipts, a relic of a life he'd left behind. He typed back, "No interview. Ignore Trevor." He hit send, the decision firm but heavy. At the community center the next morning, Frank taught a budgeting class to a group of young immigrants, their faces eager but wary. He recognized that hunger, wanting a life bigger than the one you'd been handed. During a break, Elise slipped in, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. "You're a natural," she said, nodding toward the students. Her silver hair glinted under the fluorescent lights, her smile warm but tinged with something new, hesitation. "Something on your mind?" Frank asked, stacking papers. She glanced away, then back. "A man came by my studio yesterday. American. Asked about you. Said he was family." Frank's pulse quickened. "Trevor?" "Didn't give a name." "Young, polished, angry eyes. He wanted to know where you lived." Elisa's voice was steady, but her fingers tightened on her sketchbook. "I said nothing, but he didn't seem stable." Frank's mind churned. Trevor in Rome? The thought was a splinter, sharp and intrusive. He'd assumed Trevor was licking his wounds in the States, scrambling to salvage his ruined business. But if he'd tracked Frank here, it meant desperation, or something darker. That evening, Frank walked the city's narrow alleys, the cobblestones uneven under his shoes. The air was thick with the scent of bread and diesel. He scanned faces in the crowd, half expecting Trevor's smirk. At a dimly lit trattoria, he met Marco, a former colleague from his financial days who'd retired to Rome. Marco, grizzled and sharp, had connections in the city's underbelly, useful for sniffing out trouble. "Find out if my son's in town," Frank said, sliding a photo of Trevor across the table. Discreetly. Marco raised an eyebrow, sipping his espresso. "Family drama follows you across oceans, eh?" "I'll ask around." "But, Frank, you sure you want to poke this bear?" "He poked first," Frank said, his voice low. 2 days later, Marco called. "Your boy's here. Rented a cheap flat in Testaccio. Been asking about you at expat bars. Word is, he's broke and pissed. Watch your back." Frank thanked him and hung up, the phone heavy in his hand. He thought of Trevor's last letter, "I'm trying to fix things," and the recording of his threats, now a distant echo. Was this regret or revenge? Frank didn't trust Trevor's change of heart, not after the restaurant, the betrayal, the years of taking without giving. He met Elise at her studio, a sunlit loft cluttered with canvases. She was painting, her brushstrokes bold, but her eyes flicked to him with worry. "You look haunted," she said, setting her brush down. "He's here," Frank confirmed. "I need to know why." "Then face him," Elise urged, her voice soft but firm. "You've built something real here. Don't let him take it." Frank nodded, but his gut twisted. He'd dismantled Trevor's world with precision: emails, leaks, creditors. Had he underestimated his son's response? That night, he slipped a small knife into his pocket, a precaution born of instinct, not fear. Rome's beauty hid sharp edges. Frank knew he had to match them. The confrontation came at dusk, in a quiet piazza near the Pantheon. Frank spotted Trevor first, leaning against a fountain, his suit wrinkled, his face gaunt. No swagger now, just a man fraying at the seams. Frank approached, his steps deliberate, the knife a cold weight against his thigh. "Dad," Trevor said, his voice raw, almost breaking. He straightened, hands shoved in his pockets. "You didn't answer my letter." "You didn't deserve one," Frank said, stopping a few feet away. The piazza was empty, save for a street musician packing up. "Why are you here?" Trevor's eyes flashed, anger, but also something softer, like shame. "I lost everything. The business, Lindsay, my reputation." "You did that." "You did it," Frank corrected, his tone even. "I just pulled the curtain." Trevor laughed, bitter. "Always the saint. You think you're better than me? You're just an old man with a grudge." He stepped closer, his breath sour with wine. "I came to make things right. But if you won't listen, maybe I'll take what's mine." The threat hung heavy. Frank's hand twitched toward the knife, but he stopped. Emily's voice echoed, "Small acts build big things." He'd built a life here, a legacy. Trevor could threaten, but he couldn't take that. "Walk away, Trevor," Frank said, his voice steel. "Or you'll lose more than you already have." Trevor's face twisted, but he didn't move. For a moment, they stood frozen, the fountain's trickle the only sound. Then Trevor turned, his shoulders slumping, and disappeared into the shadows. Frank exhaled, the knife untouched. He walked back to his apartment, the city alive around him. Elise waited on the balcony, her silhouette soft against the moonlight. "It's done?" she asked. "For now," Frank said, joining her. The Tiber shimmered below, and he felt Emily's presence, steady as ever. He'd face Trevor again, maybe, but tonight, Rome was his, and so was the future. The Roman dawn broke soft and pink over the rooftops, casting long shadows in Frank's apartment. He stirred his espresso, the steam curling like forgotten regrets. Trevor's abrupt departure from the piazza lingered like a bad aftertaste. Had it been a bluff, or the start of something uglier? Frank pushed the thought aside, focusing on the day ahead. The community center awaited. Today, he was leading a workshop on debt management, drawing from the very lessons he'd once ignored in bailing out Trevor. Elise had texted, "Join me for gelato after. We need to talk." Her words carried a weight he couldn't ignore. At the center, the room buzzed with voices: Syrian refugees, African migrants, all chasing stability in a foreign land. Frank spoke with quiet authority, his stories veiled but real. Debt can chain you, but knowledge breaks it. A young man named Ahmed nodded fiercely, his notebook filled with notes. It felt good, this giving without strings, a far cry from the checks he'd written for Trevor's failures. Mid-session, his phone vibrated, a call from an unknown number. Frank silenced it, but unease gnawed. After class, he checked the voicemail, Trevor's voice, slurred and desperate. "Dad, we need to meet. I'm not leaving until we talk. You owe me that." Frank deleted it, his thumb steady. "Oh." The word twisted like a knife. He'd owed Trevor nothing after that birthday toast, the humiliation still fresh despite the months. Elise met him at a gelateria near the Spanish Steps, her face framed by the bustling tourists. She handed him a cone, pistachio, his favorite, and led him to a quiet bench. "That man, your son, he came to the studio again," she said, her eyes searching his. "He's not just angry, Frank. He's unraveling. Said you destroyed him, that he wants justice. I told him to leave, but he mentioned something about your foundation, threats to expose you. Frank's grip tightened on the cone, the cold seeping through. Expose what? His role in Trevor's downfall had been anonymous, careful, emails from burners, tips through third parties. But Trevor was no fool, he could connect dots if desperate enough. He's bluffing, Frank said, but doubt crept in. Back home, the foundation bore Emily's name, pure and untarnished. If Trevor dragged it into the mud. He called Marco that evening, the city's night sounds filtering through the open window. Dig deeper on Trevor. What's he doing here? Any contacts? Marco chuckled dryly. Your boy's been busy. Met with a shady lawyer in Prati, expat type, specializes in international disputes. Word is, he's probing your finances, maybe suing for inheritance or defamation. And get this, Lindsay's involved. She's feeding him dirt from afar, bitter about her lost sponsors. Frank's jaw set. Lindsay, her facade cracked, but venom intact. He'd underestimated their alliance, even in ruins. Time to fortify. He emailed Clara, tighten security on the foundation. Anonymous donor if needed. Watch for Trevor's moves. Then, to Richard, his lawyer, prep defenses. Trevor's in Rome, sniffing around. Days blurred into vigilance. Frank varied his routes, scanned crowds, the knife now a constant companion. At the center, he threw himself into work, expanding the program with Elisa's art therapy sessions, colors healing what words couldn't. Their bond deepened, evenings on the balcony turned intimate, her hand in his a quiet anchor. You don't have to fight alone, she whispered one night, the Tiber's lights dancing below. The storm broke at the Pantheon, rain slicking the ancient stones. Frank was leaving a late meeting when Trevor emerged from the shadows, rain-drenched, eyes wild. You can't hide forever, he snarled, blocking the path. No suit now, just a soaked jacket, desperation etched deep. What do you want? Frank asked, hand inching toward the knife. Everything you took, Trevor spat. The money, the house you promised. Admit you sabotaged me, or I'll sue the foundation, claim it's fraud, that you're a vindictive old man hiding assets. His voice cracked. Lindsay has proof, emails, recordings. We'll drag Emily's name through it. Frank's blood ran cold. Emily's legacy, tainted? No. But striking now would make him the monster Trevor accused. You're finished, Trevor, Frank said calmly. Go home. Rebuild without me. Trevor lunged, grabbing Frank's collar. You owe. Frank twisted free, the knife flashing but unused. He shoved Trevor back, the younger man slipping on the wet stone, sprawling. That's your last warning, Frank growled, turning away as Trevor cursed from the ground. He walked into the rain, heart pounding. Back home, Elise waited with wine and resolve. Call the police? She asked. Not yet, Frank said. This ends my way. Marco's next call confirmed, Trevor had no real proof, just bluster. Lindsay's evidence was fabricated, her own scandals burying her deeper. Frank sent an anonymous tip to Italian authorities, visa irregularities in Trevor's stay. Within days, Trevor vanished, deported quietly. Rome settled back into rhythm. The foundation expanded globally, a branch in Italy planned. Frank and Elise strolled the streets, her sketchbook capturing their shared world. Emily's postcard, now framed, reminded him, legacies weren't just built, they were defended. As the sun set over the Colosseum, Frank raised a glass. To new chapters, he toasted. Elise smiled, their futures intertwined, the past a fading echo, the Italian autumn brought a crisp edge to the air, leaves swirling like confetti in the Roman streets. Frank sat at his desk in the small office he'd carved out at the community center, papers scattered, proposals for the foundation's Italian branch, sketches from Elise blending art with financial empowerment. The Emily Greenwood Foundation was no longer just a stateside dream, it was growing roots here, scholarships for migrant youth, workshops on sustainable living. Frank's days were full, purposeful, the kind of rhythm he'd craved but never claimed until now. His phone rang, Clara's name flashing. "Frank, we've got a hit," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "Trevor's back in the news. Filed a lawsuit against the foundation, claims emotional distress, defamation. Says you manipulated his downfall to fund it." Lindsay's co-plaintiff, spinning tales of elder abuse. Frank leaned back, the chair creaking. He'd anticipated bluster, but a lawsuit? Trevor was grasping at straws, but in the digital age, even lies could stain. "Details?" he asked. "Public filing. They're demanding access to your records, compensation. Media sniffing, local papers calling it a family feud gone global. Handle the PR," Frank said. "Richard's on it legally. Keep the foundation clean." He hung up, staring at the photo of Emily on his desk, her smile eternal, untainted. Trevor wouldn't touch this. Frank dialed Richard, who confirmed, "It's weak, Frank. No solid proof, just hearsay. We can countersue for harassment, but it'll drag." "End it quick," Frank replied. "No mercy." Elise entered, carrying fresh bread and cheese, her expression concerned. "Clara called me too. This could follow us." "It won't," Frank assured, though doubt flickered. He'd built walls, but Trevor was chipping away, forcing Frank to defend what he'd reclaimed. That night, over dinner on the balcony, Elise shared her own scars, a controlling ex-husband who tried to erase her art career. "I fought back with silence," she said. "Let his anger consume him." Frank nodded, but his path was different, calculated, not passive. Marco's update came at dawn, Trevor's holed up in a cheap hotel near Fiumicino. Lindsay's flying in tomorrow, tickets booked. They're meeting a tabloid journalist, selling their story. "Intercept," Frank said. Anonymously tipped the journalist, send proof of Trevor's shady deals, Lindsay's faked influencer gigs. The pieces moved like chess. Clara leaked old articles to the press, framing Trevor as the aggressor. Richard filed motions to dismiss, attaching the recording of Trevor's threats. By week's end, the lawsuit crumbled, judge ruled it frivolous, slapping Trevor with fees. But Trevor didn't fold quietly. A package arrived at the center, anonymous, postmarked Rome. Inside, a USB drive and a note, "You think you're untouchable? Watch." Frank plugged it in warily, Elise at his side. Files popped up, doctored emails, forged documents, proving Frank's sabotage. Crude, but damaging if leaked. "Bluff," Elise said, but Frank saw the desperation. He copied the drive, sent it to Richard, "Trace it. Build a case for extortion." The climax unfolded at the foundation's launch event, a modest gathering in a sunlit courtyard, banners fluttering with Emily's name. Donors mingled, Ahmed from class presenting his first business plan. Frank spoke from the podium, voice steady, "Legacies aren't given, they're earned through resilience." Mid-speech, Trevor burst in, Lindsay at his heels, her makeup flawless but eyes furious. "This is a sham," Trevor shouted, waving papers. "My father's a fraud, he ruined me to build this." Gasps rippled. Security moved, but Frank raised a hand. "Son," he said calmly, "you ruined yourself. Leave, or face consequences." Lindsay sneered. "We'll expose you, old man." Elise stepped forward, phone in hand, recording. "You're on camera. Trespassing, slander. Police are coming." Trevor faltered, the crowd's murmurs turning against him. Lindsay tugged his arm, but he shook free, lunging toward Frank. Security intervened, hauling them out as sirens wailed in the distance. In the aftermath, charges stuck, harassment, attempted extortion. Trevor and Lindsay fled back to the States, tails between legs, their story dismissed as sour grapes. The foundation gained sympathy, donations surging. Frank and Elise walked the Appian Way that evening, ancient stones underfoot. "It's over," she said, linking arms. "Truly," Frank agreed, Emily's spirit light around him. He defended his legacy, not with vengeance, but justice. Ahead lay expansion, Paris next, perhaps, and a life shared, untethered. As stars emerged, Frank whispered to the wind, "We won, Emily." The path forward gleamed, endless, winter-draped Rome in a soft veil of mist, the Tiber's waters murmuring secrets to the ancient bridges. Frank, bundled in a wool coat, strolled through the Vatican gardens with Elise, her gloved hand warm in his. The Foundation's Italian branch had launched successfully, its courtyard event now a fond memory despite the disruption. Donations poured in after the headlines, family dispute turns philanthropic triumph, painting Frank as the resilient patriarch, Trevor as the prodigal failure. Sympathy was a powerful currency, the Foundation's reach extended to scholarships for over 100 students, each one a quiet victory. But peace was fragile. An email from Richard arrived one frosty morning, lawsuit dismissed with prejudice. Trevor appealed, but it's dead on arrival. Watch for media fallout, Lindsay's shopping her story to podcasts. Frank sipped his coffee, the bitterness mirroring his thoughts. Lindsay, ever the opportunist, had pivoted to victim influencer, posting tearful videos about toxic in-laws. Her followers dwindled, but echoes lingered. Clara called next, her voice crackling over the line. "Frank, we've got an opportunity. A UN affiliate wants to partner, global expansion, starting in Africa. Your story inspires them." "Proceed," Frank said, a spark igniting. Emily's dream, scaling worldwide. He'd travel, oversee, build. Elise encouraged it. "Go," she said over dinner, candlelight flickering on her face. "I'll hold the fort here. But promise me, no more shadows from the past." Frank kissed her hand. "The past is buried." Yet, as he packed for Nairobi, a letter slipped under his door, no stamp, handwritten. "Dad, one last chance. Meet me, or regret it." Frank's pulse raced. Trevor, still in Europe. He crumpled it, but caution won. He called Marco, track him. Quietly. Marco reported back swiftly, "He's in Florence, crashing with an old business buddy. Broke, borrowing money. No threats detected, but he's erratic, drinking, ranting about you." Frank boarded the plane, the letter burned in a cafe ashtray before takeoff. Nairobi greeted him with vibrant chaos, markets buzzing, air thick with spices. At the partner meeting, he outlined plans, microloans for women entrepreneurs, education hubs. A local leader, Aisha, shared her story, betrayed by family, rebuilt alone. It mirrored his, forging an instant bond. Back in Rome weeks later, Elise met him at the airport, her embrace a homecoming. "Success?" she asked. "Beyond," Frank replied. But his phone buzzed, unknown number. He answered warily. "Dad," Trevor's voice, hoarse. "I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Creditors, they're not the forgiving type. Help me, please." Frank paused, the airport hum fading. Emily's words echoed, small acts. But Trevor had burned that bridge. "You made your choices," Frank said. "Live with them." He hung up, blocking the number. Months passed. The foundation flourished, branches in Kenya, plans for India. Frank and Elise married quietly in a sun-dappled chapel, rings simple, vows profound. Trevor faded into whispers, bankrupt, divorced, starting over in obscurity. One spring evening, as Frank tended a small garden on their balcony, Emily's favorite flowers blooming, a final postcard arrived. Anonymous, but Trevor's scrawl, "You're right. I'm sorry." Frank set it aside, No reply needed. Forgiveness wasn't owed, peace was earned. Under the Roman stars, Frank raised a glass with Elise. To us, he toasted. And to legacies that endure. Spring unfurled in Rome like a promise kept, blossoms carpeting the streets in pink and white. Frank stood on the balcony of their new villa, a modest place overlooking the Aventine Hill, bought with foundation earnings and shared dreams. Elisa's paintings adorned the walls, vibrant strokes capturing the city's soul. At 63 now, Frank moved with a lighter step, the weight of vengeance long shed. The foundation spanned continents, Kenya's microloan programs thriving, India's education hubs breaking cycles of poverty. Emails from beneficiaries flooded in, stories of transformed lives, each one a balm to old wounds. Over breakfast, Elise slid a newspaper across the table. Look, she said, tapping an article. Philanthropist Frank Greenwood honored by UN for global impact. Frank skimmed it, a humble smile forming. No mention of Trevor, the past was footnotes now. But echoes persisted. Clara's monthly update arrived via video call. Everything's solid, she reported. Donations up 30%. Oh, and Trevor, he's off the radar. Last heard, working a desk job in Chicago, entry-level finance. Lindsay's remarried, some tech guy. They're quiet. Frank nodded, relief mingling with indifference. Good. Focus on the new branch in Brazil. Will do, Clara said. And Frank? Emily would be proud. The call ended, and Frank wandered to the garden, tending roses Emily had loved. A young volunteer from the center, Luca, a boy reminiscent of Trevor at his best, eager and unscarred, had become like a protege. Frank mentored him in finances, but more, life lessons on gratitude, resilience. Family isn't blood, Frank told him one afternoon over coffee. It's who stands by you. Luca grinned. Like you and Elise. Exactly. That evening, a surprise package arrived, postmarked Chicago. Inside, a worn photo album, the same one Frank had pored over years ago. A note from Trevor, found this in storage. Thought you should have it back. No strings. Take care. Frank flipped through, picnics, graduations, Emily's funeral. The pain was dull now, a scar not a wound. He set it on the shelf, a relic honored but not haunting. Elise joined him, wrapping arms around his waist. From him? Yes, Frank said. A gesture, maybe. Accept it, she whispered. You've won by moving on. They traveled to Brazil next, scouting sites for the Foundation's latest outpost. Amid Rio's vibrant chaos, Frank felt alive, negotiating partnerships, inspiring locals. Aisha from Nairobi joined virtually, her success story fueling the fire. Back in Rome, Luca managed the center, proving his mettle. As summer approached, Frank booked tickets for Paris, Elisa's hometown, a honeymoon delayed but sweet. Under the Eiffel Tower's glow, he reflected, betrayal had forged him, revenge refined him, but love, Emily's memory, Elisa's presence, renewed him. The legacy wasn't just foundations or funds, it was the lives touched, the chains broken. Frank raised a glass to the Seine's shimmer. To endless horizons, he toasted. Elise clinked hers, their laughter echoing into the night. Years slipped by like pages in a well-loved book, each chapter richer than the last. At 70, Frank Greenwood stood on a balcony in Mumbai, the Arabian Sea a glittering expanse below. The Emily Greenwood Foundation had become a global beacon, branches in over a dozen countries, impacting thousands, women in Kenya launching businesses, children in Brazil learning code, refugees in Italy finding footing. Frank's role had evolved from architect to advisor, his travels a tapestry of cultures and connections. Elise, his partner in every sense, painted the world's vibrancy, her art gracing foundation walls worldwide. Luca, now a young man of 25, ran the Rome Center with the fire Frank once had. You've built an empire of good, Luca said during a video call, his face beaming from the screen. But you? Retire already. Frank chuckled. Retirement's for the weary. We've got Vietnam Next, education programs. Elise leaned in, her silver hair now streaked with white, eyes still sparkling. He's unstoppable, she teased. Their marriage, a quiet union of souls, had weathered storms, a minor health scare for Frank, a heart flutter, fixed with rest and resolve, and Elise's reconciliation with her estranged daughter, bridges mended through Frank's gentle influence. Trevor remained a distant shadow. Whispers reached Frank occasionally, a stable job in finance, a second marriage, children of his own. No pleas, no threats, just life moving on. The photo album sat on a shelf in Rome, a silent truce. One monsoon evening in Mumbai, as rain pattered the windows, an email arrived, "Dad, if you're open, I'd like to talk." No expectations. Trevor. Frank stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Elise touched his shoulder. Your choice. He typed, "Coffee in Rome next month." Sent. A small act, building toward something unknown. The meeting came under a cafe awning, rain mirroring the first drops of Mumbai. Trevor, graying at the temples, approached hesitantly, no smirk, just weary eyes. Thanks for this, he said, sitting. Lindsay was history, his new life, modest but honest. They talked, halting at first, then flowing. Trevor owned his mistakes, the toast, the greed, the lawsuit. I was lost, he admitted. You showed me the cost. Frank listened, no judgment. I wasn't blameless. Pushed too hard, maybe. A tentative bridge formed, not rebuilt overnight, but started. Trevor met his half-siblings, Frank's found family, through the foundation, and saw the legacy he'd once scorned. Back home, Frank and Elise walked the eternal city streets, hand in hand. Full circle, she murmured. Or a new beginning, Frank replied. Emily's spirit lingered, approving. As the sun set, casting Rome in golden hues, Frank whispered, we did it. The ticking of time was no longer a countdown, but a symphony of lives changed, including his own. The Roman twilight glowed amber, streetlights flickering to life as Frank, now 73, leaned against the railing of their villa's balcony. The years had etched deeper lines into his face, but his eyes held a quiet fire, fueled by purpose. The Emily Greenwood Foundation was a global force, over 20 branches, from Vietnam to Colombia, transforming lives with education, loans, and art programs inspired by Elise. Frank had stepped back from daily operations, entrusting Luca and a new generation to carry the torch, but his vision still guided every move. Elise, at his side, painted less now, her hands slower, but her spirit vibrant, her latest canvas capturing Mumbai's monsoon vibrancy. A letter arrived that morning, not from Trevor but from his daughter, Mia, Frank's granddaughter, a stranger until now. At 15, her words were tentative but clear, Grandpa, I found your foundation online. I want to know you. Can I visit? A photo was tucked inside, a girl with Emily's eyes, clutching a sketchbook. Frank's heart caught, time had spun forward, offering a new thread. Elise read the letter, smiling softly. She's curious, like her grandmother. Invite her. Frank hesitated, memories of Trevor's betrayal flickering. But Mia wasn't Trevor. He emailed back, come to Rome. Bring your sketchbook. The reply was instant, July. Thank you. Mia arrived in summer, all energy and questions, her resemblance to Emily uncanny. She toured the Foundation's Rome Center, eyes wide at Luca's stories of impact. You built all this? She asked Frank, sketching the courtyard's fountain. We did, Frank said, nodding to Elise. Your great-grandmother inspired it. Mia's visit stretched into weeks. She shadowed Frank, learned budgeting, sketched with Elise. One evening, she asked, Dad says you and him fought. Why? Frank chose honesty, measured. We both made mistakes. He's learning. So am I. Mia nodded, thoughtful. He's proud of you now. He doesn't say it, but I know. Trevor had visited twice since their cafe meeting years ago, quiet lunches, no demands. A fragile trust grew, not deep but enough. Trevor's life was steady, a mid-level finance job, a kind wife, Mia's drawings on their fridge. He'd sent a donation to the foundation last year, anonymous but traceable. Frank hadn't acknowledged it, but it sat like a quiet nod between them. In August, the foundation faced a test, a corruption scandal in its Colombian branch, a rogue manager skimming funds. Luca called, voice tense. We need you, Frank. This could sink us. Frank flew out, Elise at his side. In Bogota, he audited records with the precision of his old consulting days, rooting out the fraud. Aisha, now a global director, rallied local staff, her strength a mirror of Frank's resolve. The branch was saved, the story spun as a triumph of accountability. Donors doubled down, inspired. Back in Rome, Mia lingered, her visit extended. She joined a foundation youth program, mentoring younger kids with her art. One night, over gelato, she handed Frank a sketch, him, Elise, and Emily's photo, framed by roses. For you, she said shyly. Frank's throat tightened. This stays with us. Winter came, and Frank slowed, aches in his joints, a cough that lingered. Elise insisted on a checkup. The doctor was blunt, early-stage lung issues, manageable with care. Time to rest, Elise urged. Rest is for later, Frank said, but he agreed to fewer trips. Luca took the helm fully, Mia a rising star in the foundation's future. On a crisp December evening, Frank and Elise hosted a small foundation gala in their villa. Luca spoke, Mia unveiled a mural, and donors toasted to Emily's legacy. Trevor appeared, uninvited but welcomed, his wife at his side. He raised a glass to Frank, voice low, to second chances. Frank met his gaze, nodding. To building better. As snow dusted Rome, Frank stood with Elise, watching the city sleep. Mia's laughter echoed from inside, blending with the soft tick of time. Emily's spirit was there, in every life touched, every bridge mended. Frank whispered, it's enough, and the stars above agreed. Rome's spring sun bathed the villa in golden warmth, the roses in the garden blooming fiercely as if honoring Emily's memory. Frank, now 76, moved slower, his cane a quiet companion, but his mind remained sharp, his heart anchored by purpose. The Emily Greenwood Foundation had grown into a global institution, 30 branches, from Senegal to Indonesia, touching millions with education, microloans, and art. Luca, at 28, led with a blend of Frank's pragmatism and his own fire, while Mia, 18, had become the foundation's creative spark, her murals and youth programs igniting hope in communities worldwide. Elise, ever Frank's rock, curated exhibitions that wove the foundation's stories into art, her hands steady despite time's gentle toll. A new challenge loomed. An email from Aisha, now overseeing African operations, flagged a crisis. A political shift in Senegal threatened to shut down their Dakar hub, citing foreign interference. Funds were frozen, staff intimidated. We need you, Frank, Aisha wrote. Your name carries weight. Frank booked a flight, ignoring Elisa's raised eyebrow. I'm fine, he insisted, though the cough from last winter lingered faintly. Mia insisted on joining, her sketchbook now a laptop filled with campaign ideas. I want to learn from you, she said, eyes bright with Emily's resolve. In Dakar, the air was thick with dust and tension. Frank met with local officials, his decades of financial acumen cutting through bureaucratic haze. Mia, meanwhile, rallied youth volunteers, her social media savvy turning the closure threat into a global cause. Hashtags spread, donors pressured, and within weeks, the government relented, the hub saved. Aisha hugged Frank tightly. You're a lion, still. Mia sketched the victory, a vibrant mural of Dakar's spirit, Frank and Aisha at its heart. For the center, she said, presenting it. Frank's eyes stung, it was Emily's legacy, alive in his granddaughter's hands. Back in Rome, a surprise waited. Trevor, now in his late 40s, had emailed, visiting Italy for work. Can we talk? Mia says you're a legend. No please, just a request. Frank agreed, curiosity outweighing caution. They met at the same cafe where bridges first mended, its awning faded but sturdy. Trevor, grayer, softer, spoke of his life, stable, not flashy, raising Mia and her younger brother with lessons learned from failure. I tell them about you, he said, voice low. How you built something real. I'm trying to do that now. Frank studied him. No smirk, no agenda, just a man shaped by time. Mia's your best work, Frank said. Keep her close. Trevor nodded, a weight lifting. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. Frank extended a hand. We're here now. The Foundation's 10th anniversary gala filled the villa that summer. Luca announced a new initiative, climate-focused education, inspired by Mia's passion. Trevor attended, his family in tow, blending quietly with donors and ments. Mia unveiled a global mural project, each piece a story of resilience. Elise, radiant, whispered to Frank, "This is us, forever." Frank's health wavered, a hospital stay after a dizzy spell, but he recovered, stubborn as ever. One quiet night, as Elise slept, he wrote letters, to Luca, entrusting the Foundation's future, to Mia, urging her to dream big, to Trevor, acknowledging their shared scars. He sealed them, knowing they'd be read when time called. On a starlit evening, Frank and Elise sat by the Tiber, its waters eternal. We did good, he murmured, her hand in his. More than good, she replied, kissing his cheek. The city hummed, time ticking softly. Frank's legacy wasn't just the Foundation, it was the lives it lifted, the family it forged, the love it sustained. Emily's spirit smiled, and Frank knew, this was enough. The Roman autumn of 2032 painted the city in hues of amber and crimson, the air crisp with the promise of change. Frank, now 78, sat in a wheelchair on the villa's balcony, a blanket over his knees, his breath slower but his gaze steady. The Emily Greenwood Foundation stood as a global monument, 40 branches, millions served, its name synonymous with hope. Luca, at 31, was its visionary leader, steering it through a world of shifting climates and politics. Mia, 20, had launched a digital platform, Legacy Lens, blending art and storytelling to amplify the Foundation's impact, her murals now virtual, reaching billions. Elise, her hair a soft white halo, read beside him, her presence a constant warmth. Frank's health had faltered, a lung condition, managed but persistent, kept him home more. Yet his mind buzzed, advising Luca via calls, mentoring Mia through her bold ideas. The Foundation's latest venture, a climate-resilient school in Indonesia, bore his strategic touch, its blueprint sketched with Mia's input. A package arrived, postmarked Chicago. Inside, a letter from Trevor's son, Ethan, 12, alongside a drawing. A tree with roots labeled Emily, Frank, Mia, branches stretching worldwide. Grandpa, Mia showed me your work. I want to help someday, Ethan wrote. Frank's chest tightened, not pain, but pride. He penned a reply, come to Rome next summer. We'll plant seeds together. Trevor called soon after, his voice steady, older. Ethan's obsessed with you, he said. I told him everything, my mistakes, your strength. He's proud to be a Greenwood. Frank smiled faintly. He's got time to make his own name. Like Mia, Trevor said. She's you, reborn. Their reconciliation, slow but solid, had deepened. Trevor visited yearly, his family weaving into Frank's world. No grand gestures, just presence, shared meals, stories of Ethan's soccer games, Mia's latest project. The past was a distant scar, healed by time's quiet work. A crisis loomed in late October. Luca called, voice tight, Indonesia's school is at risk, monsoon floods, local corruption stalling aid. We need your playbook, Frank. Frank rallied, his old fire flaring. From his study, he coordinated with Aisha and Mia, orchestrating a global campaign. Mia's Legacy Lens live-streamed the crisis, drawing donations. Aisha's team navigated local politics. Frank, though bedridden some days, drafted plans, his voice steady over Zoom, cut through the noise. Focus on the kids. The school reopened in January, stronger, its walls painted with Mia's designs. Luca flew to Rome, hugging Frank tightly. You're our compass, he said. Mia, beside him, added, our roots. That spring, Frank's health dipped sharply, a hospital stay, oxygen tubes, Elise never leaving his side. Doctors were blunt, months, not years. Frank faced it with calm, writing final letters. To Luca, urging steadfastness, to Mia, celebrating her boundless heart, to Trevor, offering forgiveness fully given, to Ethan, a call to dream. The Foundation's 15th anniversary gala was held in Rome's Colosseum, a grand yet intimate affair. Luca spoke of global impact, Mia unveiled a virtual reality tour of every branch, narrated by beneficiaries. Trevor stood quietly, Ethan at his side, both wearing foundation pins. Frank, too frail to attend, watched via live stream, Elise holding his hand. As summer bloomed, Frank sat in the garden one last time, roses fragrant around him. Mia sketched nearby, Ethan reading a book about trees. Elise whispered, you built eternity. Frank squeezed her hand. We did. That night, under a starlit sky, Frank closed his eyes, Emily's smile vivid in his mind. The ticking of time faded, his legacy pulsing in every life touched, every seed planted. The world turned, carrying his light forward, the summer of 2033 shimmered over Rome, the city's ancient stones warm under the sun's caress. The villa, now a hub for the Emily Greenwood Foundation's European operations, buzzed with young voices, Mia's team of artists and coders, Luca's strategists, all building on Frank's vision. Frank had passed quietly in the spring, his final moments with Elisa's hand in his, Mia and Ethan at his bedside, Trevor a silent presence in the doorway. His last words, whispered to Elise, were simple, keep them growing. The roses in the garden bloomed brighter that season, as if Emily and Frank were entwined in their roots. Mia, now 21, stood at the helm of Legacy Lens, her platform a global force, weaving stories of the Foundation's impact into immersive experiences. At a Rome summit, she unveiled a new initiative, Greenwood Seeds, a mentorship program for youth in crisis zones, inspired by Frank's lessons and Ethan's drawing of the family tree. Her voice, steady yet passionate, echoed Frank's, we don't just give, we grow together. Luca, 32, managed the Foundation's sprawling network, 45 branches, from Haiti to Nepal, each a testament to Frank's blueprint. He carried Frank's pragmatism but added his own flair, forging partnerships with tech giants to fund AI-driven education tools. Frank taught me to see the cracks, Luca told a board meeting. I'm building bridges over them. Trevor, graying and grounded, had become an unexpected ally. Living in Boston, he volunteered remotely, crunching numbers for the Foundation's budgets, a nod to Frank's old consulting days. His family visited Rome annually, Ethan, now 13, shadowing Mia, his sketchbook filled with ideas for Greenwood Seeds. Trevor's wife, Sarah, a teacher, led workshops, her warmth softening old wounds. Dad gave me a second chance, Trevor told Mia once. I'm paying it forward. A new challenge emerged in autumn. A global economic downturn threatened funding, with donors tightening belts. Luca called an emergency meeting, Mia joining via hologram from a project in Syria. We can't scale back, Mia insisted, her screen flickering. Frank never did. Aisha, now a UN consultant, proposed a bold pivot: crowdsource microdonations through Legacy Lens, tying each dollar to a story. Luca hesitated, too risky, but Mia's conviction won. Frank trusted the small acts, she said. The campaign launched, Mia's virtual murals showcasing lives changed, a Haitian girl coding her first app, a Nepali farmer doubling her yield. Donations surged, the world captivated by the human threads Frank had woven. Ethan, inspired, coded a Legacy Lens app feature, a tree where each donor's name grew a leaf. For Grandpa, he told Mia, beaming. Elise, at 74, remained the foundation's heart, curating art exhibits that funded scholarships. Her latest, Roots and Wings, toured globally, each painting a tribute to Frank's resilience. She lived in the villa, surrounded by memories, but her eyes were on the future. Frank's here, she told Luca, touching a rose. In every choice we make. One crisp November evening, the foundation hosted a virtual gala, broadcast from Rome. Luca announced a new milestone: 10 million lives touched. Mia's keynote, delivered from a Syrian refugee camp, moved viewers to tears. My grandfather taught me legacy isn't what you leave, it's what you grow. Trevor, watching from Boston, emailed a single line. He'd be proud, Mia. As winter settled, Elise sat in the garden, a letter from Frank in her lap, his final one, unsealed only now. Keep them dreaming, love. You're my forever. She smiled, the stars above mirroring Rome's glow. The foundation's work pulsed on, a living testament to Frank's life, carried by Mia's vision, Luca's strength, Ethan's hope.